In my continuing Rust adventures, I've run into what I think is another way to implement the strategy pattern, or in more rusty language, an alternative to boxing trait objects. I saw this technique at the video at the top of the screen. Check it out. For a little context, I'm building a basic web server for practice with Rust. It takes a data source that interacts with an SQL database, but I also want to be able to use a fake of that database for testing. I started that by essentially using boxed trait objects. Check out this video for an explanation of how that works. So I have a trait that defines what an assignment data source has to be able to do. And then I have a struct for the fake that implements all of those things using hash map storage, and a struct for the SQL version that will implement all of those things using SQL. Yes, I started that and then got distracted by this cool idea. With those built, my server needs one of them, and I've been testing my controller using the fake. But this is the place where things are correct, but they feel a little overcomplicated to me. Because I'm using a trait object, the compiler doesn't know how big it is, so I have to mark it with dyn. Because my server is essentially a RESTful API, that needs to be shared between threads, so instead of boxing it, I wrapped it in a mutex and an arc. But if I didn't need those, I'd still have to put a box around it. That pushes it to the stack, and we store a pointer to it, so then the compiler doesn't have to know how big it is. This is a correct and normal solution, I think. But I can get rid of that dyn thing and end up with what I think is a cleaner solution if I take advantage of Rust's enums. The clue that I want an enum is that my data source is going to be exactly one of the set of choices. So I changed the name of my trait to end it in behavior, because that's what it really is. It's defining a set of things that need to be implemented. Then I created an enum for the general data source name, and I make one enum entry for each possible implementation. Each enum entry holds the object for that implementation. Because enums can hold different things, they aren't trait objects, they are the actual objects. With that, my server struct no longer needs the dyn. Now it'll hold one of those enums. For example, this is how I'd initialize it to run using my fake implementation. But now we have one more challenge. Every time my controller wants to use a data source, it has an entry of the enum, but what it really wants is the object inside the enum. I'd like to do this in a way that makes it easy to add other implementations of this trait, so I do not want to have to use a match statement to get the object out of it every time I use it. And I don't want to have the enum contain an implementation for every function from the trait with match statements inside it. In either of those solutions, if I make a new implementation, I'd have to add a match case for it in a bunch of places. One thing I've learned about Rust, if you want to do something architectural, odds are somebody else has wanted to do it and has built a crate that helps, and that's true here. I found the delegate crate that will delegate functions into either a member of a struct or data held in an enum. So check out this solution. This delegate macro will expand the implementation of all of these functions, which are the functions required by my behavior, to put that match at the beginning of them and delegate the call on the function to the value that match evaluates to. In this case, I just made the match pull the inner object out of the enum, but you can put whatever code you want into that match. As an example, this is what it will generate for get assignment. Here are the things I like about this solution. I don't need to worry about the dyn stuff because I have no trait objects. That makes my code look a little cleaner to me. And maybe that's just because I'm a Rust newbie. Maybe that dyn thing doesn't feel so bad after a while. When I create a new implementation, I just have to build a struct for it, add it to the enum list, and add it to the match in the delegate macro. I don't have to scatter it a lot of places. And as a side benefit, I get a list of all of the existing implementations of that behavior. This can be great if somebody else has built this. If I'm wondering, does a fake already exist for that trait? It's really easy to find it. I fully admit that I'm still a Rust newbie. You Rustaceans out there, is there something I've missed? Or is this a good solution?